Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Not Content Podcast. It is a brand new month here as we are entering the month of October. It is Halloween season. So, what better way to start Halloween season than to talk about Freddy versus Jason from 2003? As always, my name is Jerome Cuson. My co host, of course, is Brian. Make sure that you follow us on through Apple and Spotify. Leave a 4 or 5 star review. Get those algorithms going. Click and subscribe on YouTube. Click the bell icon for notifications for whenever the podcast gets posted there. Do all of those things. Please help us out. Brian is the one who chose the movies this month. And again, last year, he made a great sacrifice in not doing any horror, instead focusing on baseball. And Brian, after watching Freddy versus Jason, I can say that I would like to go back to watching baseball, please.
Look, man, when this first came out, I think we all had fun with it. I think we can all admit that. It's not a it's
I did not actually. I did not think this was
really was did you,
2003.
okay,
No.
so my experience with this movie is that when it came out in August 2003 whatever, I we went opening night and it was like a I want to say 9:30 showing, something like that. So it was a hot crowd, cuz kids are about to go back to school. It's the summer crowd, late night, and everyone just seemed to be on point and knowing their Jason Freddy lore. So like the crowd was popping, you know what I'm saying? So that it was one of those memorable crowds that I'll always remember. And it was never intentionally, it was never intended to be that kind of screening. You know what I mean? Like back in the day when I was younger, we would go watch horror movies and it wouldn't be like as crowded. But for some reason that night they released it in this middle of, not the middle of summer, but August. And they just found the right crowd because this movie grossed a lot of money for August. And for the budget this movie had, this grossed a lot of money to bring the money back. So, in
Yes, this
reality,
movie
was it a
grossed
success?
a
Yeah, I would
shocking
say
amount of money.
success. Yeah.
I mean, it's
And
unquestionably a financial success. I mean, it's just stupid that they could not figure out how to get a sequel, because like this is the kind of thing that you could do 3 or 4 of these movies and make a shit ton of money. And I know there's been a lot of disputes about the rights to the Friday the 13th movies and whatnot, but it's just like so much money is being left on the table.
I know, especially with the rumor of Ash being in the mix as well, and that kind of makes sense because I don't know if you remember this, Jerome, but in Jason 9, Jason Goes to Hell, they show a Book of the Dead, quote unquote, and it's the same Necronomicon that's used in a lot of horror movies that's from Evil Dead. So if you wanted to tie in the fact that like maybe Jason is a deadite or something like
And
that, or
they're never
just
going to do that. That's for
yeah,
sure. They'll never
it's
do
out the
that.
window now. But they had a
Everyone's too
chance
old.
to.
Robert Englund is too old. Bruce Campbell is too old. It's not going to happen, man. It's not going to happen.
I know, but there was a comic I think about it. I forget when it came out or even if it did come out, but that was the rumor, especially when they kind of planted that clue, especially all the way back in '93. But in terms of like the rights, let's kind of get this out of the way. Paramount had the rights to Friday the 13th up to the eighth one. Once they switched it over to New Line, they figured, oh, we got Freddy, we got Jason. Let's see if we can kind of do a crossover, right? So at the end of the '93 movie, Jason Goes to Hell, we see the iconic Freddy claws come up and take Jason's mask and pulls it into hell. But for some reason, for like 10 years, we didn't get a movie of Freddy versus Jason because of this kind of like rights issue mixed with not coming up with a good script, mixed with like people not wanting to participate or put, get a certain dollar amount, quote unquote. Because I'm probably sure like Robert Englund wanted a good payday out of this, and he got a good payday for sure. But it took like 10 years for development to happen. And in the meantime, they released Jason X in between because they felt like, or I guess legally they had to like release something to maintain the licensing. So they released Jason X. A year later, we get Freddy versus Jason. And, they got Ronnie Yu as the director, who also directed Bride of Chucky, which makes total sense because Bride of Chucky is a really fun movie. And it kind of brings back the Child's Play franchise back to the forefront in terms of like pop culture because it kind of went away for a while. So he's the kind of the ideal guy you would want to hire. And he did a good job, I think, like considering like he took the lore of what was able to be used in terms of the rights and mixed it in well. I thought it's a very comic book kind of movie, and the setup is like kind of wonky. But once you get to the last 30 minutes, that's all you want is just Freddy and Jason kicking each other's ass.
Right. I mean, absolutely. And to be fair, the 2000s had another schlocky type of franchise as well. That's when you had the two Alien versus Predator movies that, funnily enough, played very similarly to this movie in terms of like useless human characters just kind of being thrown to the wolves, and you're really focusing just on what you actually want to see. And I feel very similarly about this movie. Like there is no investment made in the human characters whatsoever. Like I get casting Monica Keena coming off of Dawson's Creek and Undeclared, so like she is a moderate star at this point, but like she doesn't really have the chops that some of the other people that you could cast in a role like this. And it's just it's a movie that just very I was just very unimpressed with it, and I've never been a huge fan of this movie just because like I get what they're trying to do. I have an appreciation for some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I think the first one is very good. The second one is not nearly as good, but it's very interesting. It's got a documentary about it, and I think it's at least an interesting movie. I think the third movie is very good. We talked about it. The fourth, fifth, and sixth one, I mean, I think are diminishing returns, but I never felt like my intelligence is insulted. And New Nightmare, I think, is very much a precursor to Scream, and I give it a lot of credit for being that. And I think in terms of the lore of like the Freddy element, I think revealing him to be just a complete asshole is great. But the thing for me is that Jason Voorhees as a character and the Friday the 13th franchise just has never ever done it for me. And that's the rough thing is that if I think if I was a fan of the Friday the 13th series, I probably would be a fan of this movie. And to me, the Jason of it all is kind of what drags it down because again, I'm just fundamentally uninterested in him as a character, and that's kind of where I come down. And that ultimately is why I don't really enjoy this movie. And that ultimately is why like it would be very hard for me to like have an extended conversation, especially about the Jason parts, because again, just not a fan.
So in terms of the lore with Jason, what they could and could not do, because a lot, like I said, like 1 through 8 is all owned by Paramount. They can't use that footage. They were able to use a lot of like old Nightmare footage, which was cool. Like I love that, showing the Johnny Depp scene and all that. It's just a shame we couldn't get that with Jason. And with the Jason lore, it's always kind of mixed up because every time a new director takes over, there's always some new take on it or some new weird twist on it. And to be honest, I really wish they brought back like the original characters, which you do something like that nowadays, obviously. But like if they brought in Heather Langenkamp and the guy that played Tommy Jarvis, or even if you want to bring back one of the Corey or the Corey Haim, was it? I forget which Corey,
I think
but
so. I'm gonna
yeah,
guess that's it. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
but
I think that's like to me, but then you're probably spending more money than they wanted to, and I'm sure they're not going to
because
cut it.
it seems like that one sheriff character that was the good cop almost was like a Tommy Jarvis substitute up until he got electrocuted to death, which I was like, oh, there goes the Tommy Jarvis
I am
substitute.
sure that's what they were going for.
Yeah, and then of course the name of the character, the main female lead, who's the virgin, is Laurie Campbell, and I couldn't help but think like I didn't notice this before, but obviously it's a play on Nev Campbell and Laurie Strode, which are two horror female icons, which is
Right.
funny, and it's just one of those things. It's just like paying homage to it, the franchise as best as you can. It's terrible acting, which I totally admit, but it's really interesting that they put was it Kyle Ritter, the son of
Jason Ritter.
Jason Ritter. Uh, unfortunately, his father passed away. Legendary TV star, but he was also in Bride of Chucky, which I think is like one of those cool legacy castings that, like, to honor his father. Because I believe that what didn't Ritter die like this year in 2003 or something like that,
He
or
did
around
die
this
in
time?
2003. Yep, he did
Yeah,
unfortunately pass away around this
yeah,
time.
man. So we've talked about that before, and it's an unfortunate passing. Great actor, but I thought it was a really good like callback to like, hey, I worked with your dad in Bride of Chucky. This is my way of paying it back to you. And he's gone on to do a lot of TV stuff, so it's like he's not like a failure of an actor as a legacy. You know what I'm saying? He's a great TV actor making money, so great for him, and kind of cool to see him in this role. Is it a thankless role? I guess, but it's cool to see like a legacy casting like that you wouldn't appreciate until you kind of look back at their careers. So that's really cool. And I don't know where this rumor about Rey Mysterio being a stuntman came from, but all these years people still believe it, and there's YouTube videos about it, and there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And Rey Mysterio's gone on commentary.
That's really funny, actually.
Yeah, Rey Mysterio's been on interviews like, I have no idea where this comes from. I have no idea where the Jennifer Aniston thing came from. It's just these weird Rey Mysterio rumors that have been floating around for years. Because it makes no sense that he would be a stuntman for Freddy anyway, because he's way shorter than Freddy. Anytime you have a Hollywood stuntman, you have to have the same height. It's like logic. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, it's not going to work on camera. So that was really funny. But other than that, I would say like there's no Kane Hodder, and Kane Hodder's the famous, not the famous, but the more preferred Jason in terms of like the size, even though they got a big dude for this role as well. And I don't know. I wish they kind of like tapped into some of the funnier like fan lore. Where I don't know if you've heard this theory, Jerome, but that like Jason learned to teleport in the later movies. That's why he's all over the place. I wish they kind of
I mean,
played
I
into
feel
that a
like
little
that's
bit.
a lot of. I feel like that's a lot of horror villains, quite frankly.
Quite frankly, yeah. But especially in that cornfield scene, I thought they were kind of leaning into that. But I guess that wasn't as prevalent, as a thing. Nowadays, it's more of a thing that Jason could teleport in all these movies. But again, this is 2003, so
I mean, look, if
um,
you are a fan
it
of
was a
the
different time.
lore, then I think there's a lot of value to this. But if you're not, then there really is. There's not. The problem is there's just not a lot to sink your teeth into because the human characters are just completely worthless, and the acting is just not good either. Like it's really strange. Like I feel like this movie almost needed to be campier. I feel like the movie is too self serious. Like obviously Robert Englund at this point is playing Freddy as kind of a parody character. Like that's the direction that he kind of goes in, and it's totally reasonable and understandable for him to do that. But it just feels like the rest of the movie is not in line with that, and maybe that's because Friday the 13th is. I don't know. I have not watched a lot of the Friday the 13th movies to really get the tone, but the fact that he goes to New York and has the hockey thing, like it for me, it just has to be a little tongue in cheek as well. And I wish that this movie was more tongue in cheek.
I definitely think that's what they were going for. It just took a lot of the setup to get there. It's like, well, we can have 30
It takes
minutes of Freddy versus
way too long.
Jason,
This is a 90-minute
but we
movie, and
can't
it
have
takes
like an
way too
hour of that because the budget would be doubled of what the 30 minutes was. Because in the 30 minutes that they were fighting, there was like a lot of like excessive blood loss, arms getting cut off, heads getting cut off, explosions, buildings burning down, and that was just the last 30 minutes of the movie. So you can tell where they put all the budget of the movie in, but still, like that's what the fans wanted, and we all reacted to that. And the moment at the end when Freddy winks at the audience, that was a big like oh kind of moment, and the audience kind of lost it. So I guess you can call it a tie. And in comparison, Godzilla and King Kong in the two movies they had against each other, they tied. So I guess in a movie like this, you can't really have a winner, right? But that
I
does
am not
tie
going to bring up
in.
Batman versus Superman because
That was a tie. That was technically a tie, even though someone did die at the end.
oh, it was, and God,
But it
boy.
does tie into our match, the right match, and I picked Stan Hansen versus Big Van Vader for a reason because it kind of reminded me of this dynamic of Freddy and Jason, and the fact that it also ends at a double count out, so it was no one clear winner. And in the matches they had after that, I don't think they ever had a clear winner. I think it was just a brawl, and they would go outside
I
and get
mean,
a double
Stan Hansen
DQ.
doesn't job in Japan, and I don't think Vader. The fact that Vader doesn't either probably speaks to how good Vader was. I mean,
Yeah,
this is just a very interesting. It's just very interesting to see how this all turned out.
yeah. So the background is this is an all Japan, New Japan Super Show. So obviously, one company's not going to go heavier on the other, right? They got to put the booking down the middle. There was only one, I think from the card that I saw and the video that I was able to find that was released, a lot of the matches were inter promotional tag matches, which is fine because you can get away with like the lesser guy getting the pin. But this was like the only one-on-one match, so that's why the crowd was super hyped up. And it was for the IWGP title, which Stan Hansen coming in as the outside challenger coming in for the title. It's a big deal, obviously in itself. So they put this in the Tokyo Dome. This is one of the first few, like one of the first few Tokyo Dome shows actually, because I think the first one was '89 and this is February of 1990. So this is them coming back. But yeah, this match is just kind of legendary for the legendary Vader eye popping out, and you see it at the beginning of the match. It's kind of hard to figure out when. You have to kind of rewind to see what's
Yeah,
going on because these two
you
are
really got to think very
because these
close.
two are just like punching each other off the bat. There's no like collar and elbow tie up. There's some rest holds, but they just go at it right off the bat. And if you turn up the sound, there's a certain point at the beginning where you hear this pop on from Hansen to Vader on his mask, and then that's the moment when I realized I had to like look at it. And after that, that's when Vader starts like touching his eye, and then they go to a ground move and they put an arm bar on Hansen. It's like they had to like whisper to each other that something was wrong, and then all of a sudden they get up up, and then Vader just takes the mask off, and the crowd reacts, and there's this giant like bruise on Vader's eye. It looks like obviously that his eye was trying to come out, and he put it back in. And from there, it's just like one of the most surreal things because it's like they're brawling,
I mean, it's a
but
very physical match. You just, for so
wow.
many reasons, you would never ever see something like this. And I think, and there's a couple of reasons for that. You would never see a match like this because flat out, when Vader's eye popped out, they would immediately stop it, and there just wouldn't be any doubt about that. And I don't know, like I have mixed feelings on that because again, I think like part of what makes this match so legendary is his eye popping out. So you really can't like it adds something to the match, even though again in modern times again they would stop it. Like you would never see something like this again. You can never see something like this in 2025, and maybe that's a good thing. But like this is a match that really delivers on physicality. I think for people who complain about wrestling not feeling real, please watch this because boy oh boy will this feel real.
And it's not even like the hits; it's like the way they react to it because it feels like they're really withstanding the blows. Because sometimes, like when Hansen does a great sell job, he'll take a blow and then go outside the ring itself for like a minute, right? Not only does that, but it's based off like one clothesline that Vader does. You can tell like Hansen is like out of it already just from one clothesline being out of the ring. It's
And
like
that's
they're
the other thing
really
is
bringing
he's
it.
got the concussion thing as well. I mean, and here's the thing. I mean, Stan Hansen is weird. Like he just comes across like a pretty humble guy, and he kind of knew when to fold up the tent and retire. Like I don't feel like he was somebody that lingered around for years and years and years, and you get this decrepit version of Stan Hansen. Like he wrestled a very physical style, but basically when he was done, he was done, and I think that's a good thing. I think that he knew when to fold up the tent, and he was also a guy who would give just as much as he took. I don't ever feel like he was one of these guys that just didn't take bumps and didn't sell. Like, even though he was well protected, I never felt like he took advantage of his situation. Like he wasn't like Hulk Hogan who just wouldn't put anyone over. Like he would definitely show his opponent respect.
For sure. And I think the other thing too that people need to know about Hansen is that he's nearsighted. So when he was going in the ring, it's like he's already like got blurry vision as it is. So when he's going up
Yes.
against Vader and then he hits him in the eye, it's clearly like, oh shit, I fucked up. And you could tell you could tell he is very apologetic about it, but you know that a receipt's coming and then they just lay into each other after that. And it just becomes like very little wrestling and just brawling all over the place. And then at one point they're outside, and this is one of those little things you notice. They're brawling. The count's going up to 20, and fucking Vader rolls Hansen in the ring, and the crowd pops. And I think the reason the crowd popped is because they think a finish is coming. And this is around the era of like All Japan, New Japan, where a lot of finishes were bullshit, like DQs, countouts. That really changed when Masawa kind of took over as the leader of All Japan, and they started doing clean finishes all the time, which leads to like that Ring of Honor early days feeling of like no bullshit finishes here in Ring of Honor. That's kind of where that comes from. But here in 1990 was still prevalent.
Yeah.
So when he pulls him in the ring, the crowd's excited because they think they're going to get a finish, and then they just go back outside and just brawl over the place and get a double count out. But it was still like
I mean,
it's
it's a huge
yeah,
thing. I mean, this is very much a precursor to that All Japan era of just all clean finishes, and it's something that I think is sorely needed now. I think you need to. I really wish that AEW would just do it, just be like, we're gonna do nothing but clean finishes for a full year and see what happens because I think it would be so effective and it would just kind of recenter things in a positive way because I just think we've gotten to a point where these main events have gotten so ridiculous with the run-ins and stuff that I think that it really does hurt the product. And I mean, the reason that I say AEW should do it is because asking WWE to do it is just completely unrealistic. And my expectations for them are so low that I don't think they would have the guts to do it.
yeah. I don't think so either. AEW could pull it off, but I know there'll be complaints about it's not being sports entertainment enough, and you're going to get those complaints again. But we'll see. You never know.
Don't even get me
Maybe
started.
even a select few matches because I know like I want to say Osprey and Swerve didn't have interference. That was one of the few world
I
title
mean,
matches that was like that.
especially, I would say at the very least, just do a full year. If you can't, if you really want to do it, at least have the world title matches be clean. and start there at the very least.
Yeah, which they kind of did with this last pay-per-view, Adam Page and Kyle Fletcher, which was they're really adamant about not having interference, so they really explicitly put it in the rules. So, but in this case, for this All Japan New Japan Super Clash match, it's legendary for the eye thing. They did have a rematch at Wrestle War 91 on WCW, but again, they only got like 10 minutes, and they just kind of did a rehash of what they did, and then they did a double DQ at the end, just for the American fans. And there wasn't really like a finish to this rivalry at all because they were at separate companies. They did reunite later in the decade as a tag team, which is kind of cool actually. If you find that footage, like circa '99, like Hansen is like his last year in wrestling, and he's teaming with Vader, and they're just still
Yeah,
like
because
big dudes.
basically by 2001 he's retired, right?
Pretty much, because once that split with All Japan happened, it looks like I think he wanted to retire a little earlier, but because they needed star power, he kind of waited a year or two and participated in some stuff. Then he retired quietly. But that's kind of like the story of Stan Hansen. He really never had that last match, quote unquote, that famous last. I mean, he's had a last match, but not like a famous like Ric Flair's last match or Sting's last match or Tenryu's last match. But he just kind of went quietly out,
And
which is cool.
The Saudis aren't fans of his, so they're not gonna direct
Okay.
him out of retirement.
Okay, well that I didn't know, but I guess the Saudis. I guess the Saudis do have
Oh,
some people
don't
they
even
don't
get me
like.
started on that shit. Don't even
Oh,
get me
I
started.
know, I know. WrestleMania 2020 or 2026 is going to be so interesting to be
2027. It's in 20.
2027.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it for this week. As you can kind of tell, like Freddy versus Jason, Hansen and Vader kind of fit together because, like, obviously the both had a draw ending. Both have like eye problems. Like the wink from Freddy, and of course Jason's always got eye problems with his fucked up eyes, and Vader having the fucked up eyes. So it was kind of a cool kind of comparison. Kind of, they're
Yes.
compatible. So next week's going to be really interesting because I'm a big Hammer horror fan. I've gotten Jerome on board on some of the classic Hammer horror films, but I'm going to expose him to some of the lesser known titles next week. So it's going to be a double feature. They're both relatively short movies. The first one is The Mummy, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and that dynamic of opposite sides. So it's going to be fun. And you can tell like this movie really had a heavy influence on the 99 Mummy because it kind of goes that route a little bit, but it's also got some horrific, graphic violence for the time. So that's why I think I had that. I think it had an X rating. I'm not sure on that one. And then, of course, the next one is Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, and it's about basically Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, except turns into a woman this time, and the woman part of him has to lie and say he's a sister, and it becomes this weird dynamic. But also at the same time, he's murdering women. So there you go. And I think that's a really cool, it's a really cool watch, and I think it's a modern A24 remake in the making. So we'll find out about that, but we'll see. We'll see how Jerome feels because I know he loves the Hammer horror stuff that I've introduced him to so far. But we'll see about the lesser known titles and see how he reacts. So. That's it for this week. Any final thoughts?
No, I think we are pretty much good to go, and I'm really excited to see these movies. Even if they're not good, I expect a more robust conversation because I think the Hammer horror movies may not always be great, but Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee are always worth talking.
Of course. So thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.